antidote. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no antidote.
Hello from Scotland and a hotel room. Not quite as exciting as my usual back thoroughfare with all of the books and all of the other fabulous things, but I'm in Scotland and there's whiskey here, like a lot of it. So basically, I feel like this is going to be an awesome show because we're going to be traveling through time in many ways. And I am so excited. And I know you are too, because there's been a whole conversation happening in the chat already. Davey, I might have you come in and kind of like pull some of those pieces down as we go. It's been very exciting to see.
Absolutely. Everybody's excited to talk about dinosaurs. Who doesn't love talking, thinking, imagining about dinosaurs?
Imagining all the things dinosaurs? Absolutely.
Yeah, we are definitely going to have some fun with this one.
I already saw some people putting up their favorite quotes. So I'm going to ask you to help me out by like going back and figuring out where some of that went.
Oh boy, yeah, we'll dive in. We'll dive in.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Now, Brandy, the question on everyone's mind, of course, is: did you bring the hat with you, or did you buy a new hat while you were there?
Okay, so this is my actual usual hat, but I'm going to be coming back through York because there's a hat shop that I frequent there. And while I was there, I saw a gentleman wearing a purple version, and I feel like I got to go find it. So there might be another one joining, all the other hats coming up soon.
Excellent.
It's very possible.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Well, since there's been this massive discussion about impact craters and stuff happening already, I feel like, without further ado, we need to bring in tonight's amazing guest, Riley Black.
Hi.
Hello.
I was not ready for the smoke bomb. That's great. I'm loving all the
Yeah, we call it an explosion.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool. So we basically try to bring you in with as much aplomb as possible because you make these shows. This is what makes us this and our guests, like honestly, Davey and I mean, we're cool. We are, but it's y'all that make this good. So Anna Lopez is waving, says, hi, Riley. I know we've got a lot of people. Britain is squeeing a little bit of squee happening. Leanne has been leading the day a little bit here, talking about, she's a geologist, and so she'll have plenty to say too as we come along. It's good to see everybody. I actually have to ask, hopefully Kate's on. I haven't seen Kat yet. Kat, when you get on here, I'll ask this question a little bit. So I've been traveling, and that means I don't actually know what name won for our drinks this time. I know there were a lot of really cool names offered, like Beerita Rex was one, Asteroid Juice. There were a couple others. So if you guys know who won, you can pop it up in the chat, or we'll ask Kat again later. But raising a glass to all of you. Mine's whiskey. Yours is water.
Right now.
Water live. So you guys can share with us what it is that you are bringing to the table tonight. We did go with something. Davey suggested we should have gone with something with Fireball.
Yes.
Fireball. Something to think about it. Yeah.
One of these days I'm gonna have to do an Ice Age book because there's a clade name, so a group of cats, which we all know and love, the Smilodontini. So that's the group that Smilodon belongs to. But I feel like Smilodontini by itself needs to be a drink, possibly with like grenadine or something.
Yeah, that's true. And the other cool thing about it is we were trying to think of cold drinks because it's been such a heat wave everywhere that you wouldn't necessarily know it. Leanne just popped in, and I do want to say this because I sometimes forget to mention it. If you are watching live and you are part of the chats, you'll want to be on live chat, not top chat, because otherwise you'll miss a lot of the things as they're rolling over. So we do have a couple people making the mocktail. What's that?
The chat goes fast. You got to keep up with it.
It does. It really does. No, we're on, Leanne. Sorry.
Oh boy.
Hang on. Leanne might not be on. We are live.
Leanne's definitely asking enough questions that we thought she was with us.
She was with us.
I mean, sure, she knows more about some of these impact stuff than I do. Like, I study the animals, but the geology of it, that's a whole other thing.
Together we will make it right. Oh, so that's funny. Teresa says she made hers with the cinnamon whiskey, so it's not Fireball. but it's in the right camp. Oh, there you are, Kat. Hoposaurus Rex is the winner. Hoposaurus Rex. Waha!
Now, those would be good tracks to find, because we have hopping tracks in the fossil record, not from dinosaurs, but from other critters, where you find the three-toed feet hopping together in a line. So if you find that for T-Rex, that would be fantastic.
That would be so cool. That would kind of, it would sort of, would wrap it up nicely, wouldn't it? Davey, can you answer what's going on with Leanne there? Maybe you can grab her and see where. Sometimes,
yes, I will.
Refreshing page thing. So anyway, I think, first of all, they're going to be writing questions, which I'm going to be popping on the screen as fast as ever I can. But one of the things that I always like to start off with, because it's just a fun segue, is what gave you the idea for this specific book, right? Because you've been everywhere. You've been on TV. Everywhere I turn, I'm like, there she is. There she is. So how did this come together? How did you end up writing this particular book as opposed to, say, another one?
Yeah, I ran into that today myself. It's a little bit annoying. Like, I annoy myself with this because I've been writing about paleontology for so long that when researching a subject, especially for like doing fact checking or annotating a piece, the first things that pop up are pieces that I wrote. And I forgot about. They're from like 2014 or whatever it is. So it's like there's certainly plenty to write about. But I kept realizing that I wasn't giving this extinction its due credit, and that I kind of yada yada it. It'd be, a big rock strikes planet, yada yada yada, extinction happens, and
Right.
And you're yada-yadaing over the best part.
Right, exactly. I yada-yada'd an extinction, which was not very nice to do to many of these animals. But as I learned more about it, there was a particular paper called Survival in the First Hours of the Cenozoic. And I think it's paywalled. I think you can still find it, through the magic of the internet somewhere. But it really drove home to me how the first day, the first 24 hours was incredibly violent. And it was so different from everything that I had heard. And at the time I was coming up with this idea, I had just come out and I had just started my transition, and I was also going through a divorce at the time. So it felt like my life had also kind of been hit by an asteroid and was recovering into something new and different, and the story of resilience that I was going through. So it spoke to me on a personal level. I both realized that the story hadn't been told, and I had like a personal stake in investigating this and learning more about it and telling that story as I learned it.
Yeah, I love this story. I love your way of coming to the story, but I also agree with you. There's so much that we gloss over sometimes because we're like, oh no, it's all sad afterwards, right? Like all the good stuff is beforehand, but that's not necessarily true. Leanne, she found us. She's with us. She says you have such a way with words, like a storyteller, and I actually find that you're always this way because I loved my beloved Brontosaurus, but we were just chatting before the show began how difficult it is because you're taking bits and pieces and yet you're weaving this very incredible story. And I think asking a little bit about craft is really, I want to know because I'm trying to do this too.
It definitely was a challenge. So if my previous books were more journalistic in tone, the first was more historic in tone, and that was like what we do in PopSci. That's the bread and butter of it. It's like, I am here as somebody who's like almost a stand-in for the reader, being like, okay, I'm going to introduce you to this world of wonderful things. I think it's what Ed Young's called like the wonder beat, and that's like the standard, right? The stuff that makes you go wow and you want to tell somebody. But I realized like in my case it wasn't really clicking. It wasn't firing on cylinders. I was proud of what I wrote, but it wasn't really resonating the way that I wanted it to. So I thought about, well, what if I do narrative? What if I take all the stuff that I've been learning, all the stuff that I've spent, my whole career, basically researching and writing about, and compiled it into something that was unique, something emergent from all that stuff. And it was freeing. I felt there was a little bit of, in my case, danger of anthropomorphizing the critters, like, how can I really know what they were thinking? But this is something that, again, it intersects with all these other parts of like who I am, right? So I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder in that I deal with flashbacks almost every single day. And, if you're familiar with those things, and it's not something that's visible to most people. My girlfriend will notice, like I'll sometimes like, make a little noise, or like I'll seem to go somewhere else for a second, and that's about it. But it's that embodied feeling where you're not just remembering something, you feel like you're in that moment. And for whatever reason, I feel like that's related to the way I wrote this book, and that when I was writing these scenes, it felt as if I was there. I put myself in that
Yeah.
mindset of like, okay, I'm in the late Cretaceous. What am I seeing? Where's this animal going? What does it look
Yeah.
like? Does it smell like? How's it feel? So it wasn't just sort of like this higher level logic kind of coming through. It was a very emotional way of writing, and it kind of pulled through from that. And I think that's what makes the book so different.
I think so too, and I think all of us feel like we were there too. I mean, you're reading it and you're thinking about the animal snuffling in the burrow and eating the messy, decayed flesh meal. You know what? This was
Yeah.
in the month afterwards, right? And you do. I mean, I run on the treadmill and I listen to books often, and so it's I'm having a visceral, embodied experience of it anyway, and I feel like it really does work out. A couple things that a few people mentioned. Kristen said, she's old enough to remember, me too, actually. Oh, we don't know why they died. Maybe it was this, maybe, and it's just a big deal to find out why. And I agree, because I think that drove me crazy. I'm like, there were millions and millions of these creatures and nobody knows where they went. What do you mean?
Absolutely. And it's something that there could be a whole other book written about, probably be a history book, but we had so many ideas. There have been dozens of ideas about why the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. And, now it's within the context of a mass extinction. It's, 75% of known species disappeared virtually overnight. But the dinosaurs are what we focus on, right? We want to know why.
Right,
We
right.
build them up into
Yeah.
these monstrous, like dominance is something that comes up quite a bit with these animals, and it's something I'm trying to push back against. But it's like they dominated the planet. We kind of relate to that from where we're sitting, and we want to know why. I remember as a kid, you can still find it on YouTube. It's called The Dinosaurs with an exclamation point. It was a PBS 4-part documentary series with all this great animation. The last episode's about their extinction, and it's like this ash field, and all these dinosaurs are wandering around. They're emaciated, and there's this T-Rex that topples over. Or if you want to remember Fantasia, like all the dinosaurs are in the watering hole and things are drying out. And it always seemed like that, like how it was presented to me, like the slow process where they just didn't make it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And even with the asteroid, that it took years. It was like this protracted process. And from what we understand now, almost all our favorites, T-Rex, Triceratops, all the big ones anyway, were probably gone in the first 24 hours.
Yeah,
And
that is
so
amazing.
fundamentally different.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's interesting to me because up there, I think it was Leanne that said it's so Hollywood, right? Just like dinosaurs blasted off the planet, and this is the best disaster movie ever, right? It is terrifying and frightening to think about, but also, yeah, there it is. There's Leanne. Fascinating too. I just wanted to throw in, Bonnie talks about to thank you also for Skeleton Keys. Riley also wrote Skeleton Keys about talking about fossils and things like that. And I already mentioned my beloved Brontosaurus. This is my personal favorite.
I love it too. I need to rewrite it.
Right, because there's new things found all the time that change the way we think about it.
There is. It was about, I think, 2 years after that came out, or at least the year after it came out. There was a paper suggesting that Brontosaurus might be valid again. So there's certainly more, to discuss. And yeah, I'm hoping to keep rolling on to the next one. I think I've written 10 books total so far, and then I'm gonna send in the proposal for what's gonna come after Last Days of the Dinosaurs, hopefully on Monday. So this is like the whole process, and what to do next is very much on my mind.
That is awesome. Yeah. Oh, there's Skeleton Keys. Anna Lopez Carr says she felt transported by the book. I think a lot of us, did you see that dinosaur? Yeah. I think a lot of us feel that way. We feel like we literally time traveled. And that's what I love about this, is that I feel like we can, we step back in time with this book in a way that, you did that with my beloved Brontosaurus too, but it was almost a walk through my own childhood of understanding dinosaurs. Whereas this feels like, it just feels like we had somebody was there with a GoPro on a really bad afternoon,
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Like, I love movies. I love things that are cinematic, and that's the way that I thought about writing this. So, when I watch some of my favorite films, like things like like Aliens or Mad Max Fury Road or what have you, I think about well, what are we seeing, and how the focus pulls, and how there's this big world out there. There's all these different angles and sort of interpretations and views that we can have. So, how is the director sort of centering what they want you to see and telling the story through perspective? And that really informed how I wrote this. there was so much to talk about. There's so much on the cutting room floor, really, or things I couldn't even get
Oh
to,
no!
or
Will there be
address.
articles? Are there things we can get from you?
I
Is
mean,
there a blog?
gradually, little by little, there's always something more to
Yeah.
talk about. But there were some creatures, like, for example, I really wanted to write about this dinosaur called Thescelosaurus, and
Mhm.
there's nothing particularly special about it. It's this little beaky herbivore. It's like a mini iguanodon kind of thing, and they're beautiful. They're neat. They're kind of like the deer of the Cretaceous, and I wanted to give them like their moment in the spotlight. It's like I just can't make it work. So sooner or later, they'll pop up again. But if you like that kind of storytelling, I'm hoping to continue that with the
That's
following
really cool.
books. Yeah.
Kristen Meston said the pairing of the narrative nonfiction with the research-based appendix was really satisfying, and I agree with that. I saw a question. You guys are writing a lot of stuff really fast. Let's see here. Sadie Simmons says, the depictions of each creature experiencing how things felt different in a moment in time. That was really great, and I think that was instructive for me as a writer, because I'm working on a book myself right now where there's so much that we don't know, and it's like filling in those gaps in a way that is absolutely scientifically, historically accurate, but at the same time is giving you a story is really difficult. I think you did a beautiful job.
Thank you. It's something that
The other thing is,
oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say, Leanne asked, how do we know, I missed it, I missed the actual question, but how do we know sometimes it was the female dinosaurs that are showy versus how do we know some of these things? Because a lot of this, I know we do know it, but I'm fascinated to understand how we found out.
Yeah. So I think that was in particular in reference to the Torosaurus I wrote about, because I talked about she's kind of coming into her mating season at the end of the Cretaceous, like as we meet this like initial cast of dinosaurs. And that was just a choice that I made, because something I really wanted to do with this book, kind of in a way that was, still accurate and everything else, but was to mess with gender. So often, like even in museum halls, I was just in one yesterday, how many people, how many families, they will refer to every dinosaur as he. And this kind of image of like the sort of the masculine dominating and, things like that. I just wanted to offer some flip sides to that. And we know, especially amongst birds, and birds are living dinosaurs, that sometimes like the females are bigger and they're flashier and showier, and that's just part of natural variation. So that kind of dovetails with what I was going to say a moment ago, where when we talk about accuracy in reconstructing these things, accuracy isn't necessarily like just the cumulative amount of stuff that we know, whether it's documents or data. For example, with these dinosaurs, like no one's ever found, the lungs of a T-Rex or the stomach of a Triceratops or these soft tissues and stuff. And yet we know they're vertebrates. We know that they're living things. We know that they had them, that they got hungry, that they ate, that they felt and sensed things. So that's really why I wrote that appendix, was not even just showing my work, but just saying like, think about these things like they're alive. They're not just like a pile of bones. And if this thing, it has parasites, or its tooth hurts, or it's hungry, or whatever it is, that those things have consequences, and they likely experience so much of what other living things do, that we can take at least some of those common denominators and put them back into the past and say, okay, we don't have direct evidence for this, but it probably happened in some fashion, in some form.
No, it does. I mean, there's a bird, I can't remember. The female ends up having lots of males feed her, and she's the one that she hangs out in the hole. Do you know which one I'm talking about? And she's like super flashy because she's all like, boys, oh boys, and the males are not. So we do have that natural variation. Let's see here. This is true. I thought about this the entire time I was reading this. Like, if you just fried a lot of dinosaurs, the sights and smells would have been interesting.
Yeah, especially as someone who likes to cook quite a bit, like knowing that the air temperature, got to the point where it was basically broiling. If you're broiling a chicken, that's what it was at. And then thinking of things like T-Rex, as horrific as it was, it's still like, oh my goodness, there's no parallel for it. And that was part of the challenge of writing it, and that this is more dramatic and a bigger story than we can possibly perceive. Especially think about like the forces of impact, the amount of energy released, the amount of rock that was pulverized and sent over the planet, the speed at which it was going. It's like children's numbers. Like, you can put down what the number is, and you can look up sort of the conversion charts and things like that.
But it doesn't,
But there's no context for it. We have no context for it. So it's like a way to, like, the precise number almost isn't relevant, because it's so big that we can't imagine it.
Yeah, it's off the page, right? It's like there's a page and you draw a line on the page, and that's where, and this is around the page. Like there's no real, I think that's a bad analogy, but you get the idea. I just put up Britton's comment about how important this was and how she was denied certain kinds of scientific histories. And, here they are. And this is one of the reasons why I love this book club is I love fiction too. I write fiction, but there's just so much to learn, and everything that all the scientific beasties and monsters that you come up with, I don't think any of them are as cool as some of the weird dinosaurs that lived, and even some things that weren't dinosaurs, which were even weirder sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's part of the story, right? So, like, so much of the focus, even on the title, there's a T-Rex on the cover. It's T-Rex in the
Right.
first chapter. It's called The Last Days of the Dinosaurs, so that's our focal point. And I knew I had to do that because if I talked about, like the first day of the Paleocene or something like that at the beginning, no one would have any context for it because we're not
Paleocene.
there yet. Yes. So, but it's really a story of resilience and how life came back. Like, yes, that we're going to deal with loss and grief and violence and catastrophe. But most of the book, I had somebody the other day comment, it was something that it made me laugh because they meant it kind of as a critique. But they said the chapters, I guess, following the first three were just not as dramatic for them. And in a sense, I wanted to say, well, they're not supposed to be. Per se. Number one, I'm trying to reconstruct these events at these different points in time. I can't make it more disastrous or so out of nowhere, and I can't write the dinosaur, that T-Rex survived because that didn't happen. So I'm kind of a little bit stuck. But it's the second half of the story, and that's to me the important part of the story is that we're not just ending with and most of life died. It's well, how do I come back? How do you bounce back from something that is that devastating? And to me, I feel like the first chapter and the last chapter are really complements of each other in that way that it's life thriving in different ways, and how did we get from one to the other?
We've got this is Lexi's husband on Stephanie's phone question. How do you balance scientifically arguably ambiguous dinosaur looks, all the things that happen, with the common general ideas of how dinosaurs looked, right? Because we have these competing mental narratives, mental pictures.
Yeah, I love that. Right now, I think they're both still touring. There's two exhibits. One is Sue the T-Rex traveling exhibit. I saw it when it was in Denver. And then there's T-Rex the Ultimate Predator, which I think is in British Columbia right now. And they both have life-size models of Tyrannosaurus Rex, and they both look fundamentally different. One has, a very chunky, very thick, kind of pale-colored, featherless, Tyrannosaurus Rex representing Sue. And the other one, it looks like a demon Muppet where it's orange and tiger striped, and it's got the shock of proto feathers on the back. And those are both made by scientists and sculptors and artists at the top of their field, and they look really different. Yeah, that's the T-Rex the Ultimate Predator exhibit, and I love that. And then we have these different images, right? So there is some, I don't want to call it necessarily artistic license, but there's some debate about some of these things, and you can make a justified choice either way. For a dinosaur that we only have, say, there's a Velociraptor species. There's a second species of Velociraptor that's only known from a maxilla, so that's basically your upper jawbone, and that's it. But because it's close enough to Velociraptor and other dromaeosaurs in the family, we can say, okay, it probably looked in outline
Similar,
something like this, but we don't have the precision. And sometimes you get thrown off, and that's part of paleo. My favorite example of this, briefly, one of my favorite dinosaurs as a kid was Dinosaurs, the terrible hands. Just this set of shoulders and arms that were taller than a person is, just absolutely gigantic. And no one knew what the rest of the animal looked like. And we figured out it was an ornithomimosaur, so something like Gallimimus from Jurassic Park, but huge, T-Rex size. Gallimimus was probably what it looked like. So finally, I remember I was at the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology meeting in Los Angeles. This is the big annual conference where all the paleontologists get together and share their research. And there was a talk on this, and we finally know what it looks like. And they showed it on the screen. It had a duck bill, a sail on its back, the specialized features at the end of its tail for feathers. It looked so different from what we could possibly expected. The whole room gasped and burst into applause because we all knew this famous animal. So we can kind of make our estimations, but the number of dinosaurs that are 100% completely known are very, very few. And those kind of become our context for reconstructing the rest of them. So even after we've found everything that's out there, let's say tomorrow, we just had all the fossils we're ever going to find in collections, it would still be centuries of work to put these things together and understand what they look like. Yeah.
Sorry about that. When I popped that video in, it was the dinosaur, and by the time I hit share screen, it was like back to that guy giving a joke. I kept scrubbing ahead, thinking there'd be more dinosaur, and it just kept panning back to him. But yeah,
But
you saw a little bit.
you were on it though. That's what I love.
Well,
That's what you found the ants that time, which was amazing.
Teresa has started it again in the chat because she asked, "Is it an absolute unit?"
Yes. 100%.
Which is now a running joke for multiple episodes of the Peculiar Book Club.
Yes. Everything is an absolute unit. I also have to say that when I was reading about your whole dinosaurs with the lice thing, I had a very similar kind of like, oh yeah, you just don't think about things like that.
Yeah, I read a paper about mass extinction of lice. Like from the genetic record, we know that when the non-avian dinosaurs went extinct, like the parasites went like, I got nowhere to live, and they had to cope with it.
Yeah, I suppose that's the only, that's like a consolation prize is that we might lose a lot of mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm.
I would feel good about that, I think. That would be about it. So Kristen Meston says, please tell us about fuzzy T-Rexes.
Yes. So there's been, because it's T-Rex and because we have loved this dinosaur to death and back and to death again, there's this debate about whether T-Rex had fluff or fuzz or feathers or something like that. And we know there are other tyrannosaurs from that same group, the tyrannosauroids, that were covered in fuzz. There's two from China. One is called Dilong and the other is called Utyrannus. And Utyrannus is 30 feet long. It's pretty big. And it was covered in these wispy feathers. So since we have tyrannosaurs with feathers and every other sort of related lineage to tyrannosaurs, whether it's the raptor-like dinosaurs, the oviraptorosaurs, the therizinosaurs, they all had feathers. We think that T-Rex probably did. The main debate is was it so big that a downy coat would have overheated the dinosaur? And I think there's some debate there about the physiology, and we don't have the direct evidence. There's a patch of T-Rex skin that's about that big, and it's from the tail, so it doesn't tell us a whole lot directly. But I feel like if you want to have a fuzzy T-Rex, you can have it, and that's the way I prefer my T-Rex. I like a fluffy T-Rex. I think it's charming, and I think it's just justified by the science. But I know some people are really invested in the scaly Jurassic Park version as well. And that's the neat part, is that you can look at some of these things and say it's still an open question. How do we test it?
Sorry, Brandy, I popped you out for a second because you were frozen on the screen, but you're back.
Yes,
I was. I keep being a little bit frozen. I'm actually thinking that is good, but it's not fantastic here.
I might hang out for a minute, make sure Brandy, make sure someone sticks around with you, Riley.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, just keeping fingers crossed it's not like an asteroid impact or something.
Right, that would be the first sign, right? It hit on that side of the Earth, and then Brandy goes down. And
right, yeah. So I'm gone first, and yeah, you guys can hear me now, though, right?
Yes,
I'm back.
You're good.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
So, I mean, that's every horror movie, right? It's we've lost signal, and then what do we mean?
Actually, now that I think about it, I'm a little disappointed because we are going to do a quiz towards the end of the show, and I didn't even think about asteroid movies. We totally could have done a whole separate quiz on asteroid movies. Just a spoiler, it's dinosaur movies.
It's dinosaur movies. Well, since I'm, I seem to be glitching slightly. So while we are right here at that midpoint in the show, I think it might be time for a little music, little segue, little entree. Shall we have some dinosaur music?
Please.
Oh. This one's gonna be a little hard to believe. I'm telling you. Too many dinosaurs in the kitchen. So how will I ever get something to eat? And too many dinosaurs in the bathroom. So how will I ever brush my teeth? Oh, there's too many dinosaurs. And we fear them, of course, because they really want to eat us. Listen, too too many dinosaurs on the front porch. How will I ever get off the block? And there's too many dinosaurs down in the laundry room. How will I ever change my socks? Oh, there's too many dinosaurs, and we fear them, of course, because they really want to eat us. So and we fear them, of course, because they really want to eat us. I said they really want to eat us. Well, that's it for this time, Peculiars. Until next time, remember, as always, I am Cord Ravenswood, your peculiar in the field, going far and then farther. And I gotta tell you, I never expected to encounter this sort of difficulty in my domestic life. Toodaloo!
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. And the claymation dinosaurs, like as a child of the 80s and early 90s, I love claymation dinosaurs. So there was, I remember the dinosaur family that lived in the wall in Pee-wee's Playhouse, which is great. There was, let me see, one of my favorite films. It's still on YouTube. It's just called Prehistoric Beasts by Phil Tippett, and it's a stop motion little short dinosaur film. So it's like, as much as I love seeing the CGI and the puppets, like stop motion claymation dinosaurs are my favorite.
They are pretty great. I appreciate that. That's my claymation attempts there. Though Cord Ravenswood, who has yet another great hat, said Susan, he wrote that song specifically for your book. So that is your song.
I love it.
Yeah.
So would we have made a good
As
snack
there
for
are problems
dinosaurs?
with the feed, I might need you to throw some questions up, Davey, but I saw a couple good ones. One is someone asked, if the dinosaurs had been around longer, someone's teenager wants to know, would they have evolved to be a more intelligent species? There it is.
I love that. So first, Davey, I heard you ask, like, would we have made a good snack for dinosaurs?
Would Cord have reason to be concerned?
Yes. It depends on the dinosaur. I think many of them wouldn't quite know what to do with us. Like, one of the larger carnivores might take a shot. But, remember, Velociraptor was about the size of a turkey in real life. So it's like, you would get, and turkeys are not to be messed with, certainly, but you wouldn't be in danger of being bored by that turkey. So I think you'd be okay with a lot of them. But yeah, if that asteroid hadn't struck, or if non-avian dinosaurs had still survived, like how intelligent would they get? We don't really know. It's been 66 million years. But what I always love to say when this question comes up is we have super intelligent dinosaurs. Ravens, crows, corvids, particularly like New Caledonian crows that use tools to make other tools, is kind of a window into what that alternate history would have been like. There's an artist called Mimo Kosman who's done these great dinosauroid paintings. And this goes back to an idea in the 80s because there's a paleontologist called Dale Russell who did like a kind of like a sapiens flea stack kind of surviving dinosaur. And since we know the dinosaurs are birds, they're like, well, wait, they wouldn't need hands like us. They wouldn't have to be humanoid. They'd probably use their beaks. They'd use their claws. How would they do this? So they'd be much more bird-like. And I think it's awesome that, even though most dinosaurs went extinct, we still wound up with very intelligent and very charming dinosaurs still living with us.
Well, one of our, if I'm not still frozen, another question was, why did T-Rexes have such short arms? What do you think they were for originally? Would they have eventually evolved not to have them at all?
Yeah, that's a persistent question. I don't think we have like the answer as to why just yet. And I think that's part of the problem, right? It's like the questions that we ask about the fossil records. So when we say like, well, why does this animal have this trait? we're thinking about adaptation. Like, what is that for? Where sometimes like an arm's not necessarily for any one thing. It can do lots of things. So if with tyrannosaurs, it seems our arms were small, and we see this in other carnivorous dinosaurs that get big, as weight saving, like their heads get heavy, all that muscle and all that jaw power. So it's like a counterbalancing kind of thing. And on top of that, it seems that like what smaller arms are out of the way. So basically, if you've got big arms and you're trying to wrestle prey with your mouth, you can't even see your hands because your eyes are on the sides of your head, as many big carnivorous dinosaurs had them. You can't even see what you're doing with your arms. So it's best to kind of keep them out of the way. But those arms were still heavily muscled. They were doing something. I think maybe it had something to do with courtship, maybe something to do with mating. It makes me think of like sharks today. Like I remember sand tiger sharks, one of my favorites when I was a kid, and female sand tiger sharks have skin that's like twice as thick as that of the males, because the males will basically bite the female and hang on during courtship and mating. So maybe those tiny arms, like they got small, but they were retained to hang on during some of this. And that's just me.
Don't we all?
being
Don't we all?
entirely- Yeah, speculating about them. But that's the thing, we don't really know. There's always that question of what like an appendage or a trait actually did and what it could possibly do, and how we test that in the fossil record.
I mean, it was pretty incredible, the variety of tools that you described, and even the dinosaurs that were defending themselves against the T-Rex, and all their, bone-shattering clubs on their tails and things like that.
Yeah, they were entirely unique in that we have living dinosaurs, but it's not like you can just take the behavior of a sparrow or a crow or something like that, as if birds were the same anyway, and just project it back into the past. It's dinosaurs were their own animals. We have nothing that's like an ankylosaur or a stegosaurus or a triceratops today, or even a T-Rex. This was a world that was entirely unfamiliar to us. So there's some things in common that would seem familiar, but the way they lived and evolved and affected each other's evolutions was just like sauropod dinosaurs in particular, things like Apatosaurus. They're the most familiar and most confounding dinosaurs, because so much like, how do you get that big? How do you feed a body that big? And every time we learn something new about it, it's the weirdest thing. To just throw it out there quickly, there's a paper about Apatosaurus that just came out about how they replaced their teeth. So all dinosaurs replaced their teeth throughout their lives. It was usually one at a time, and we were able to tell like how quickly this occurs. With these sauropod dinosaurs, like our friend Apatosaurus, it was all at once. They all came out in one set and got replaced. And there's only one other animal alive today that we know that does this, and that's cookie cutter sharks. And so it's like these things were eating so much vegetation so quickly they couldn't wait for the individual things to come through. And the fossil record, sometimes we find, like, they call them sauropod dentures. It's just a full set of teeth, as if they just fell out of their head. And it always makes me think of that like cartoony cash register kind of sound. Like, did they lose one and the next one came in, just like ka-ching. But yeah, they keep doing things that we never expected.
Yeah, that is weird. I would not have thought that. I'm mad at you. I'm going to throw my teeth at you. I don't know. Was it defensive perhaps? It's like, take my teeth.
I mean, that's just how much salad they ate, really. It's like
I have Liam asked if you could explain a little bit more about why we say non-avian dinosaurs, because not everybody understands that, and I think that's really important.
Right. So this is a little bit of what we have to deal with as we learn new things. So when dinosaurs were named, we've been discovering them for a long time before that. I want to make sure I recognize that, like, indigenous peoples all over the planet were finding fossils and finding dinosaurs and coming to their own understandings about them that were actually often more accurate than a lot of early scientists in Western Europe. Whereas, an early naturalist in Western Europe would say, like, oh, these were, remnants of, the flood, or fossils can't be real. It's just the earth trying to imitate life. Meanwhile, people in other cultures were saying this was something that was once alive and it's not here anymore, and getting the basics of it. But the word dinosaur was coined in 1842. And at the time, they seemed totally unique, just these big, weird reptiles no one had ever seen. It wasn't until, well over a century and a half later that we realized that birds are living dinosaurs. And because we came to that realization so much later, it's hard to rework that language and that understanding.
Yeah.
So birds are dinosaurs just as, like, we're mammals. It's like a group kind of thing. But when most of the dinosaurs that we talk about, like when I say the word dinosaur, chances are you're not thinking about a chicken or an ostrich or a penguin or something
I
like
might
that.
be.
Yeah,
might
even
be.
though like you might be. We were talking about this before, but most of the time, like the standard image is something like Triceratops or Stegosaurus. So we say non-avian to sort of specify, almost like a period of time, the ones that were primarily around between 243 and 66 million years ago. But even that's tricky because the earliest birds are 150 million years old. So they were just another lineage of dinosaur. They didn't come after, they were there with all their relatives. So it's really this artificial kind of dividing line just to help us communicate like specifically what we're talking about.
Do you ever think the birds look around and are like, whatever happened to Steve?
Yeah.
What happened to them?
Oh, the stories that they could tell, I'm sure.
Well, we have something special for you, Riley, which is, and all of you peculiars, we found some original footage that was shot of the last day of the dinosaurs. I know, you wouldn't expect it, but
Right.
turn up amazing things. So, Davey, do you want to show us this is the moment at which we lost the dinosaurs? Non-avian.
Did you hear what happened to Doris? No. She got eaten by a carnivore.
Poor Doris.
Poor Doris. Whoa. What is that? Do you see it? What if it's a rock the size of a mountain careening through space and it's gonna burn through our atmosphere and destroy life as we know it?
You worry too much.
I do?
You too.
Whoa, do you feel that? What if it's seismic waves traveling through rock that's gonna cause tsunamis and kill everyone we know?
I think it's just a touch of gas.
Gas?
I eat a lot of vegetation.
Swamp gas?
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about the price of gas, actually.
You don't own a car.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that reminded me so much of the Jim Henson's Dinosaurs show. The tone and everything else, that was wonderful.
Oh, that is exactly what I said to her. I said we are careening towards the Muppet Show right now.
Yes. Well, there's another, since it came up in the video, there was a paper from not so long ago about sauropod dinosaurs, and if they basically create enough methane through all their vegetal farts to alter the Mesozoic atmosphere and cause global climate change in the ancient past. And I just love that somebody thought of this and used like math that I can barely understand to try to calculate this.
Well, that was Mark's addition there. So we are Finger Guns and Lady Paws. Lady Paws was the don't you worry too much dinosaur. Yeah, we just sort of ad-libbed that.
I loved it. It reminded me so much of sort of Muppet voices, things in particular. So many things like the Muppets Take Manhattan when Kermit finds the office of all the other advertising. Yeah, that was great.
Strangely, that. So I have one other voice, and it's that one. This is the voice that I use. Like this is my oop, I took the wrong turn kind of voice. Anyway, so
now they're talking about cow flatulence in the chat.
Yeah,
probably the same problem.
But we also I mentioned the price of gas thing in there just because, of course, today I feel like if there was a giant burning rock coming, everybody would be like, it's that Don't Look Up show, right? Just like, it's fine.
Yes.
Don't worry about it.
That's the thing, right? Like, I don't want to get too dark with it, but I remember pitching a story about this, about like kaiju. And if like Godzilla or something showed up today, what would the response be? And there'd probably be like Fox News stories about how monsters aren't real and, like San Francisco should have been destroyed anyway. And it's like all these stories that we tell ourselves, like the world's going to come together to face this threat. It's like, we know we're not.
All right. Well, then I have to ask you. Then you said towards the end of the book, you did say that dinosaurs aren't coming back, but it was kismet. I was driving home listening to some stand-up on the XM radio, and Jim Jeffries was doing a bit about how the Earth is just going to be fine. Like in a year, when we're gone, a year later, everything is going to be swallowed by vines, and there's just me like, you know what? F it, I'm doing dinosaurs again. So that was his punchline. And I was like, perfect. If dinosaurs can't come back,
Mhm.
I mean, are things going to keep getting bigger? Like, the dinosaurs, you talked about their growth to become
Yeah.
monsters.
Yeah.
Could we get some giants again? Some kaijus?
Cows.
I mean, one would hope, right? So that's the thing. We live in this weird time period. It's a megafaunal lull where we lost most of like our big animals. Like there used to be whole communities where you'd have like, a mammoth and a mastodon and 3 species of giant sloths and 2 species of saber-toothed cats and stuff, like all in the same ecosystem. And now largely, some of it had to do with ancient climate change, some of it had to do with like the arrival of humans in different continents. But we had a major extinction and we're still in this lull. Now we're preventing big stuff from existing, whether it's whales or elephants or hippos or anything else. We have this effect on stuff. So if we disappeared, yeah, there's a good chance that stuff is going to get big again. It's just what's it going to be? I wonder if there's just going to be like giant rats, because rats are just everywhere and they're so versatile. And they can adapt to different, yes, ROUSs. But like there used to be, for example, like wombats, which are not, rodents, but wombats the size of Volkswagens that lived in ancient Australia. Or, if birds might get bigger, as they've done over and over again, and get to something that's sort of toothless T-Rex like, because the possibility is there. Or saber-toothed cats. Like this is the first time in about 30 million years that we haven't had a saber-toothed cat. And it's not hard to do. They just evolve longer canines and specialize on large prey. So that would be my one bet, the one certainty. It's hard to be certain about any of these things, but I would say like if we poofed out of existence, other things are around, Strata's descendants would become saber-toothed cats.
I don't know why I'm doing so much miming, but I am tonight. It's a mimey kind of thing. Kathleen Richardson's cat is very excited about giant wombats. But Amanda asked a question. She said, could our landmass support giants now? I mean, we've messed up a lot. Like how long would humans have to be gone before that would actually be cool?
It would take millions of years. I mean, if we look at, for example, we go back to the mass extinction at the end of the Cretaceous. Body sizes, the mammals that survived that made it through, they're about the size of a house cat. And within about 1 million years, they got about the size of a German Shepherd, which is, quite impressive, evolutionarily speaking, in 1 million years, but it's not giant size. It took, maybe another 10 million years or so before you started getting animals that you would call big, like, bigger than rhino size or so today. And then it took another, couple of million years before you started getting things like Paraceratherium, like this huge rhino that was one of the biggest mammals that ever existed. So it would take quite a while.
So if humans you're gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
Some of the things we already have that are big,
yeah,
potentially could give us a head start though, right? Like elephants could get bigger, I assume, if we weren't around messing things up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, they could get bigger. It seems whales have the biggest potential. Like today's whales are the largest whales that have ever existed, which is kind of neat. So we often think about the biggest stuff that existed in the past. The earliest whales are very small by comparison. So like blue whales, it's not only the largest creature that's ever existed, but like nothing that big has ever existed until now, or until about 1 million years ago. So, they could potentially get bigger, but here's the thing. And this is one of the questions that, often get, like, why were dinosaurs so much bigger than mammals? It has to do with like offspring, in that if you want to get bigger and you're a mammal and you just state your offspring inside of you, you need to keep that offspring inside for longer. An elephant's gestation period is over 2 years. It's about 2.5 years. And during all the time, there's so much that can go wrong. Pregnancy is really hard for a body to take. So to get bigger, they'd have to carry their offspring for longer. So you start to hit these biological limits. We're never going to get, unless it's like another reptile, basically, or another form of vertebrate life that doesn't exist just yet. We're not going to get back.
What if we got
awesome?
Or they lay eggs?
Yeah, they weren't as big as an elephant, but there were giant platypus in the past. There's an animal called Obdurodon. Yes, that was like a human-sized platypus. They ate.
That's crazy. Sadie asked about bugs, and would they be massive?
So
there were big ones, weren't there?
Yeah, to do that, we need changes to the oxygen levels in our atmosphere. So in the deep, deep past, we're talking more like 330 million years ago during the Carboniferous, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's all these coal swamps, all these plants like seed ferns and things like that that grew to tree-like sizes. And plants just ran riot, and they produce so much oxygen that if you're an insect, more oxygen in the air makes it more efficient for you to breathe. You get more through all these little trachea along your sides. So you get millipedes that were 6 feet long, or the famous
Yeah.
dragonflies that had like wingspans that were like 3 feet across. But even then, you run to the square cube law, right? Where like the bigger you get, the more volume you have inside. So they need exoskeletons that were so thick that they wouldn't be able to move to keep all that stuff inside. So again, they would start to hit these limits. So the fact that, you know, things like Patagotitan or Argentinosaurus, these huge sauropod dinosaurs, got as big as they did, that's the question of like, how out of everything that there ever was did dinosaurs do this? What combination of factors let that happen? Because there are so many other factors that, like, it's basically physics and chemistry telling biology you can't do that, and dinosaurs somehow found a way to do it.
Dinosaurs are like, hold my beer. Hold my beer, Saurus, my Hoposaurus. What is the name?
Yeah, it's like,
Hoposaurus
what if I
Rex.
made my lungs a swamp cooler? Would that help? Sure, yeah, we'll give it a try. And it went great.
Didn't they also have lighter bones? Someone had mentioned that earlier, that they had very like porous bones.
Yes.
I see a
So
comment.
there are 2 main families of dinosaurs. They're the Saurischian or lizard hip dinosaurs,
Wow.
which doesn't really help us because birds are technically lizard hip dinosaurs, and they're ornithischians, so things like Triceratops and Stegosaurus. The ornithischians didn't have these air sacs in their bones. So far as they know, their bones are relatively thick. But
Okay.
the Saurischians, things like Apatosaurus and T-Rex, like members of those groups, they had all these air sacs that basically came out of the respiratory system, off the esophagus, off the lungs, and allowed them to breathe unidirectionally. So when you look at their bones, they're like paper thin. Sometimes you can see light going through it. They're so thin. So all these air sacs, like basically they were like air bladders in their bones that allowed like the bones to stay strong, but also be very light. So they could be incredibly light without sacrificing strength. So this is going to sound weird, but there's a dinosaur called Supersaurus, and Supersaurus was over 100 feet long. It only weighed 45 tons. I know, only 45, but there are other dinosaurs where it's more than twice that much. Or if you wanted a mammal that big, it'd be over 100 tons. So it really was like this weight saving thing that allowed them to get so big.
That's pretty cool. So Kathleen has a good I think, yeah. I'm sorry, it's Kristen. I'm getting y'all confused. Kristen says, what does it say about humans? I think I know what it says about humans, that we're going to go extinct. We're only going to exist for like 1/10 of the time that a T-Rex existed, and it's going to be probably self-extinction. That's like depressing, but kind of the point of your book too.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked that a little bit about this book. It's sort of like the comparison to our modern moment. And I am working on an essay for Aeon about this, so I'll be able to lay this out in a little more detail on that. But, you know, at this point, like, we're not the asteroid because we can choose not to be. The asteroid was heading towards the Earth for millions of years, like throughout the entire evolution and the rise of the dinosaurs and all that stuff. It was basically like a big cosmic accident that had ever happened. But we have choices, and we have choices for what we can do today. And I think if we do let ourselves go extinct, it's going to be a not a great mark on us. But I at least want to believe that like we can make decisions that will make a difference. And we know that things are going to change. We know things are going to get bad, but I'm hoping that eventually it kicks over and we can remember that, like, as the quote kept coming up before, like, you know, just by existing, we make a difference. And that's absolutely true. It's like, you know, through the air we breathe and the choices we make and what we do, it affects everything around us. And if enough of us do that, and then there's the whole corporation question as well. Like, you know, we're trying to do this as individuals, so much of the problem is at the corporate level. But still, I want to believe that, like, as a species, we can try and do something to change this path that we're on.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I do think that there's still hope. There's hope, partly because of, I think I froze. Am I still there? I know it keeps happening.
No, just a glitch. Just a glitch.
I was just going to say that my, you know, some of the hope is like, look at us. Look at this peculiar group of wonderful people who come to our group and who take part. And so, like, y'all are my hope. You guys are giving me life here. Davey, I think it's time for a quiz.
It is time for a quiz. And you know what? I don't think we're going to be stumping Riley on this one. Her, you know, the knowledge that you've shown of movies and pop culture and everything, I don't think I'm going to stump you too much on this one. So the quiz this week is called Life Finds a Way. But will you find a way through this quiz? So 3 questions about dinosaur media, we'll say. There's a surprise twist for the last question. So in the original Jurassic Park movie, our main characters are surprisingly saved at the end of the film by this dinosaur. Is it a heroic Brachiosaurus? Is it the Tyrannosaurus Rex? Or or is it a Stegosaurus that comes in to save the day?
I love to see it. It's Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Absolutely. I figured this one was a bit of a give me. There weren't too many questions I could ask you about Jurassic Park that I
Yeah,
thought
and not.
that I thought would stump you. But it is it is the iconic dinosaur film. I mean, it's interesting that we have such an obsession with dinosaurs, but I honestly don't think no movie has featured dinosaurs the way Jurassic Park franchise has. Like they've been in King Kong movies and things like that, but
Yeah. I mean, and it's still the one, even though we have 6 Jurassic Park movies and we have like the series and everything else, like that is still the movie where I feel like science and technology and movie making magic, they all came together to like, it's still as old, even though it's 3 decades old at this point, it's still like the dinosaur movie to me.
even though the T-Rex didn't have any fuzz on it. We'll forgive
That's
Steven
true.
Spielberg for
I'll
that
forgive
one.
it.
All right, question 2. We're going to go with a kids movie because, of course, kids movies have also I mean, you could see from the chat, the childhood obsession with dinosaurs. So in the film The Land Before Time, it has a surprisingly powerful message for its young audience, exploring issues of blank. Is it prejudice between species, economic disparities, or C, gun control?
Well, to quote Sarah, I did hear that 3 horns didn't hang out with long necks, so I'm going to say A, prejudice between species.
Peculiars. We'll give the peculiars a chance here, and they're all chiming with A. Wow, you guys know your Land Before Time. Yeah, I saw this such a long time ago. You are correct. It is prejudice between species. I didn't realize there was such a social message in these movies. I mean, I saw them as a kid, but I haven't revisited since then.
I mean, even the phrase to this day, Littlefoot's mom, will start making me cry. I remember I was giving a talk at a museum in Georgia once, and they're like, they had me follow to give a talk, a screening of The Land Before Time, and I'm coming up to the podium like, I'm sorry, I need a minute.
And you did mention Henson and the small screen. So my last question is about the small screen. In the early 90s, the early 90s family sitcom Dinosaurs, the breakout character Baby Sinclair is known for this catchphrase, which he says to his father. Is it A, give me mama? Is it B, not the mama? Or is it C, ain't mama's cooking?
I'm going to say not the mama.
Not the mama. Peculiars, do you remember this show? This is a peculiar show. Yes, Baby Sinclair. The answer is, of course, not the mama, which I was like, what was the context? Like, I looked at it. I was like, yeah, okay, the quote is not the mama. I was like, what was the context for that again? And I pulled up a YouTube clip, and he's just beating his father over the head with a pan or a spoon. Hey, that little baby just wanted its mama.
I like C, though. That feels like a very Seinfeld, like an attempt at a catchphrase. It's
Right.
Not
So a perfect 3 for 3 on the dinosaur quiz. Congratulations.
I think everybody got those actually.
Yeah.
I want to return to something which got said earlier in the chat, way earlier, and it was by Leanne, who is actually a geologist, and she was talking about parts of Virginia being blown up and out, landing as natural glass in Texas. And so one of the other things that I thought was really interesting, of course, I've seen you, Riley, on Alaskan Dinosaurs and on the one with David Attenborough recently and all this stuff, is that concept that literally land is, it's not just that land is mobile as in plate tectonics, but we liquidated land and threw it into the sky. It's just such a crazy idea.
Yeah, it goes back to that old quote, and I feel very bad that I don't remember who said this, because it's like in every geology department, but it's like civilization exists by geology's consent. Basically, that we think of like the abiotic world as just this thing beneath our feet, and it changes at such a slow rate, and we know it can change very, very quickly and do all these dramatic things, and it informs so much of like what grows where and what lives where, and this relationship, this kind of unseen relationship between the living world and the abiotic world. And I think geology is such a powerful example of that. And it's thinking about this extinction in particular, we're looking at a global event through a lens that's really like maybe a couple of counties across the Western United States and a few other spots around the planet. So to me, it's amazing at all that we kind of can get that picture, that this was so global and catastrophic that like whatever small sliver that we do have, we can still tell that something dramatic happened there.
I know there was another question earlier, and you pulled up the quote You said it again in the show, but some of the quotes you used, or some of the the language that you added into this. I know some of the peculiars way up at the beginning were asking a little bit about your writing and kind of your flair to it with some of those quotes.
Particularly about that just by existing, we change the planet. I think that came up a lot as being a really favorite one. Another one was fish are just oily calories. I thought that was really
Yeah.
you have a beautiful way with words, actually, a really wonderful way of painting pictures with words, so that I think that we all experience it, and it's awesome.
Oh, thank you. It's something where when I write these things, it's difficult sometimes with science writing because there's so much that we read that's in passive voice and technical language. And in writing this book in particular, it's like, well, what does it mean? What is there another way to say like what the essence of this thing is, rather than saying like, the average fish contains this many calories, and it could be like, sort of doing it very academically. It's something where I really wanted to go for broke with this book. When I was writing it, it felt like such a risk. Even presenting it to my editor, saying like I'm doing this thing that is kind of like paleo fantasy in a way, but scientifically informed, and people are going to learn a lot from it. But there's also like a deeper level to this and this resonance I want it to have. So I figured, okay, if I'm going out on this limb, I want to really go for it and express like how I feel about these things, like not just describe the scene as if you're watching it like it's a 2D image, but give you this kind of like at least one layer of depth beyond it. And that's the way that I thought about it. And it was hard. It just came out. It was hard not to do. That's kind of how my brain works through a lot of these things. And I'm glad that it translated to the page, because that's the goal, like at least the goal that I have as an author. It's kind of, it's taking what's ever in here and trying to convey it as best I can so that you see something similar in your own head. Yeah.
I always say that if I had a time machine, I would waste it on going forward 2 weeks to find out what it was that I was going to write, because normally I sit there going like,
you don't want to go 2 weeks. You don't want to go 2 weeks back and go, what was I thinking?
No, yeah, well, no. I want to go 2 weeks. I want to save time. This is another great. I agree, Leanne. That's another great phrase. Scientifically informed paleo fantasy should be a cocktail name, probably. Maybe a band.
Feels like it should have edible butter in it.
Sadie Simmons has made a very nice comment. She says, Peculiar Book Club has definitely made it feel like science writing is having a moment. We have been really lucky to have so many wonderful writers on, and believe it or not, we are at the end of our show, which seems impossible because I feel like we just started. There's so many more things we could say, and so many more things that I know people would love to ask, and I'm sure I missed questions along the way. But as we sign off tonight, I just want to say thank you for coming, for being one of our authors on Peculiar Book Club. You're now an alum, so you'll get all of our newsletters, whether you want them or not. And we're coming back actually next week. This was a special VIP show. We have another show next week, which is Elise Carter, and it's Red Menace. And so it's about lipstick, it's about cosmetics. And I feel like it's a really fascinating book about the power of those things. So science means a lot of different things. It means dinosaurs and lipstick. And I love that, and cocktails. So I hope all of you will join us again next week. I will still be in Scotland. Actually, I might be on, were we at the airport then? It's going to be a very interesting attempt at getting to that show. Kat says, no more dinosaur chat. Never enough dinosaurs.
Well, at least folks can find me, on Twitter and Instagram, like at Laylap. So if you have outstanding dinosaur questions or want to talk fossils, just shoot them over there. I'm always happy to talk about them.
Yeah. And
there's
just
the Twitter handles below. I know the Twitter handle will be on the screen in a second.
Oh, okay. There it goes. And Chloe was saying, I did want to say how happy I am that liking dinosaurs isn't tailored to boys. It's very much something that works for it.
You're there.
Sorry.
Keep going.
Oh. Okay. It's very much a thing that works for everybody. Audrey says this is amazing. So great listening. Everyone says it's wonderful, and they're really glad to have this much broader view of what it means to love dinosaurs. Riley, you do have a t-shirt, right? We sent you one. I did send you a t-shirt.
I didn't get it just yet.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep working on that. I have I don't know what to say about the mail these days, but yes, there is one coming. And as always, thank you, Davey. Thanks to all of you from lovely Scotland. Thank you, because we love when you join us. A place where, if you're weird, you're family.
got the blue bottle blues. When you wake up in the night, don't make a big mistake, 'cause you can never make it right. When you reach out for the vial, feel the ridges in the glass. It's a matter of survival, baby, better watch your back. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no